Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, I guess. All right, may I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Director Esner?
Here.
Director Byers? Director Faulkner? Director Hudson?
Here.
Director Mueller?
Here.
Vice President Petrov? Here. And President Cuneo?
Here. All right.
If I could just quickly make a motion to excuse Directors Faulkner and Byers from the meeting.
There a second?
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Public comments, I don't see any. Would someone like to make a motion for approval of the agenda, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Superintendent's reports. Bond refunding.
All right, good evening, President Cuneo, Vice President Petrov, Board of Education, and Dr. Keenan. My name is Jeff Fogg. I'm the Chief Operating Officer. And with us tonight is Lorenzo Boyd from Stiefel. We are refunding our 2014 Series A and 2014 Series B. And I'm going to have Lorenzo come up and explain you through what we're doing and the savings that we're going to see with that.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Hall mentioned, my name is Lorenzo Boyd with Stiefel. I want to give you a couple of details about the refinancing of the school district's 2014 A and 2014 B certificates of participation. So on today, we sold a little over $19 million of certificates to refund those two series of bonds. We actually, through that process about 4 weeks ago, we went through the underlying rating program with Dr. Hall. The school district was affirmed its underlying rating of AA. From Standard & Poor's, which is in the top 10% of all school districts rated in the state of Missouri. So we're very pleased with the affirmation of that underlying rating. We actually, when we went out to the market this morning, we actually received over $73 million in orders. So we only were selling 19 million of certificates, but received over 73 million of orders. So there was very high demand for those certificates. So we were able to lower interest rates about 4 to 7 basis points throughout the entire curve. The original final maturity on those certificates was 2034. So with those savings and that adjustment of those interest rates, we were able to save the school district about $2.7 million from now until 2034. So we're saving about $65,000 for the first 2 years and about $250,000 starting in 2025 for about $2.7 million, which comes to about 10% of net present value. Target whenever we actually go to refinance certificates or bonds, we look to save 2%, so we're saving over 5 times what our minimum threshold is to actually save bonds whenever we're refinancing. And as I mentioned, the original final maturity was 2034, and the final maturity of the new certificates will be 2034 as well. And so those are direct savings to the school district, $2.7 million. And with that, I'll ask for any questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
COVID mitigation plan. Sure, monthly update.
Yes. So we're going to have Mr. Ferdinand and Dr. the update of the board on our mitigation plan that we'll be voting on Friday with the information. So please, they'll go into the details about where we're going to be going from now until after Mr. Briggs.
Good evening, President Cuneo, Vice President Petrov, Board of Directors, Dr. Keenan. My name is Kelly Grigsby. I am the Executive Director for Schools and Programs.
And I'm Kevin Andrew, Executive Director of Career and Technical Education and College and Career Readiness.
Next slide, please. We're here to talk to you tonight about our mitigation plan and our priorities for our mitigation plan. We continue to review this regularly as required. Tonight, our priorities have remained the same. We want to make sure that we are maintaining the health and safety of our staff, students, and visitors, and their families. Create and maintain a safe environment where students can learn, comply with state, local, and federal guidelines and requirements. Next slide, please.
All right, so a little bit of a recap on some relevant laws, rulings, and regulations as related to this topic. So House Bill 271, as you recall, that's the legislation that's requiring us on a monthly basis to come to the board to give you an update on our COVID mitigation plan, where we're at with that, and keep the board informed. Second piece, when you look at state laws and rulings, so as you may have heard in the news in the last couple of weeks,
you had the Shannon Robinson et al. V. the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services court ruling. That was the ruling that came out of Cole County in Missouri. That was specifically looking at mandates issued by local public health agencies and the Department of Health and Senior Services. And so that was looking at, from non-elected boards and groups, requiring specific mitigation measures or other policies such as masking requirements. When we delved a little bit deeper into that ruling, looking at it through the lens of a school district, there's some important things to think about. And so that ruling really has a narrow interpretation where it's looking at anything coming from a local public health agency or the Department of Health and Senior Services. When you look at our COVID mitigation plan, you're going to see right at the top that it says what we're really what's driving our mitigation plan and strategies are recommendations from the federal government and the CDC, not the Department of Health and Senior Services, and not the recommendations from St. Louis County Health Department. So the items that you see in our plan are directly tied back to the recommendations from the Center for Disease Control. There's also two relevant Missouri statutes that should be referenced as well when you think about this court ruling. So first, Missouri Revised Statute 171.011. That statute specifically states that the school board of each district in the state may make all needful rules and regulations for the organization, grading, and government of that school district. So that talks about how the school board, you really have the authority to make the rules, policies, and regulations that cover our districts. And then Missouri Revised Statute 167.191, which states it's unlawful for any child to attend any of the public schools of this state while afflicted with any contagious or infectious disease, or while liable to transmit such disease after having been exposed to it. So those are two applicable pieces of state law that tie back to that court ruling. And so when you look at our COVID mitigation plan, we're really centering around that the school board is the one that has the authority to regulate our schools, and it's our job to protect the health, safety, as Dr. Grigsby had talked about, of our students, and that ties back to the containment of contagious and infectious disease. On a federal law standpoint, the other piece that plays into this is the American Rescue Plan, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, also known as the American Rescue Plan, also known as ESSER 3. That regulation requires us as a public school district to receive ESSER 3 funds. We have to have a safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services plan on file, and we're required to update that at least every 6 months. As a part of that update process, it requires getting stakeholder feedback, and so that's a federal law. That is the reason why we're having a little bit more of an in-depth discussion tonight, is we're a part of that 6-month renewal. Our plan's been in place for 6 months. We made some revisions in November, and now we're back giving some updates. Next slide. So key provisions of the SSD plan. When you look at the overall key provisions of our plan, they have stayed the same. So masking required indoors regardless of vaccination status, social distancing, health screening, which is just a self-screen. We're not screening people on the way in the door. Promote vaccination opportunities. We're doing contact tracing following the CDC. Cleaning, enhanced sanitation protocols, periodic revision and review, so we update it as needed at least every 6 months. And then the whole plan is on our website. Next slide. Considerations that we took into account when we were looking at the revision of this plan was feedback from our students and families. That was both feedback that we've received over the course of this first semester, where in general the feedback we've gotten from families has been very positive. We haven't received a lot of feedback from families with concerns about the mitigation measures that we have in place. Overall, our families are comfortable with our masking policy. Our families have been comfortable with our quarantining. We've been tracking our student data, student attendance data especially, and looking at those trends, and then also our staffing levels and our capacity. As a part of this, we put an optional survey out there where families, students, community members, and our employees have the ability to provide the district with feedback of this plan. Of the feedback that we've received, it's been overwhelmingly positive that they like the components of our mitigation plan. Two real hot button topics have been masking and quarantining. Only 14% of the individuals who responded to our survey indicated the district should change its policy regarding masking and switch to mask optional. So 86% of the people who responded to the survey were comfortable with our current masking policy. On the other end, we actually had some feedback where they wanted us to be more stringent as far as making sure that there's effective wearing of masking and in reensuring that those protocols are being followed in all buildings where SSD operates. The second piece with quarantining, we only had 2% of the individuals who took that survey respond that the district should look at changing the way that they were handling the quarantine policy as well and loosening that. So overwhelming majority of our staff and families who participated in that survey indicated they like the plan as is, and those key provisions are things that help them feel safe and they would like to see us continue. So our recommendation is to continue with the current plan as we continue to monitor the data and look at new factors such as the Omicron variant.
So at this time, we are submitting our plan, our recommendations, the plan to you for review. I understand you'll be voting on Friday. The plan does not contain any changes. We are still recommending universal masking. We're still asking for quarantine measures that we've been taking. We recognize that there are some of our partner districts that we work with are taking different stances on this, but due to the fragility of our students and the feedback that we've got from staff working so closely with students, we're asking that we maintain these measures. If the plan is revised, then it will be submitted to the board for approval once approved. If it's revised after it's approved, we'll submit it for approval. And then we'll continue to provide, revisions every 6 months, continue to take stakeholder feedback, evaluate data, and respond as needed. Next slide. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I had one. On the approval and revision process, could we change where, could probably change the order on the revision process, but more than that, on that revise every 6 months, we get a review of this every month.
We get a review of it every month. As I mentioned earlier, the American Rescue Plan requires us to do a revision, an official revision every 6 months.
We change that revise at least every 6 months to revise every 6 months and/or when a monthly update may take.
Yep.
So that we could include that in our, I don't want people to think that we do a monthly update, never do it.
Sure.
Change that one.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, paraprofessional support. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I did not mean to slice it. I apologize.
That's all right. Slice me anytime you want. Dr. Cuneo, President Cuneo, Vice President Potroff, board members, Superintendent Keenan, my name is Paul Bauer, and I'm here to talk about an update to the district's strategic plan, what we've been working on. Next slide, please. Going to do 2 things tonight. I'm going to give you an update. That should have been changed to say board rather than governing council, so I apologize. And to give you and let you know about our next steps to getting ready to implement this plan in July. Next slide, please. Just to review, those of you who were on the board about a year ago, remember that we spent a lot of time revising the district's mission and vision, core values. I'm not going to read them to you because you know what they are. But again, I'm going to stress, support, and empower students and help our students achieve their fullest potential. Next slide, please. While we were working on the mission and vision, we also looked at our core values, and we went from 7 core values to 3. And these 3 core values are much clearer, much more powerful, and much more direct as to what we do as a district. Next slide, please. I want to real quickly review the goals and the strategies in the plan. First goal is, and I'll back up a little bit. As we developed these goals, prior to doing that, we looked at a lot of data about the district, a lot of internal data, external data, stakeholder input, parents, teachers, paras, partner district superintendents. We looked at survey data from our students. We put all of that together, and that's what led us to identifying the goals that are in the plan. So the first goal is to implement effective strategic database systems that efficiently and equitably support instruction and operations. I'm going to stress a few words in that we're going to be strategic, we're going to be data-based, going to be efficient, and we're going to be equitable. Next slide, please. Strategies to achieve that goal. First, we're going to develop our administrators' skill sets for strategic priority setting. Strategic priorities are things that help you accomplish your mission. So that's how we're going to reorient our thinking as the district. And then we're going to develop internal capacity for using data systems so that we can make data-based decisions in all the directions we go. Next slide, please. Our second goal was to optimize resources to equitably support students. Key words: optimizing resources, equitable, greatest potential. Those are the things that we're focusing on with this goal. Next slide, please. Strategies to accomplish that are first that we're going to identify what we have available. Everything that's out there that people are using to operate the district and to teach students. What resources do we have? And then, once we know what we got, we're going to develop some processes so that we can effectively and efficiently and equitably distribute those resources so that we can help our students achieve their greatest potential. Next slide, please. Third goal has to do with communication and relationships. We need to be collaborating with all of the stakeholders who we can. We need to be communicating both with external people and internal people. Next slide. And these strategies show what we're going to be working on. We're going to work to establish relationships with outside parties that support student success, and that's the key. It's great to have a great relationship with an outside agency or an outside business, but if it doesn't help us support our students to succeed, it's not a good relationship. Our second strategy is to continue the work that we've been doing engaging families. We want all of our families to be equal partners in the education of their children. And the final is to establish communication systems among the department and with staff. So vertical and horizontal. Next slide, please. That's our strategy map that shows where we're heading and what we want to do. And the pictures on the right cut off the arrow, but it all points to students achieving their full potential. Next slide, please. Now, there's been some discussion and there's some confusion about CSIP versus strategic plan. Some districts write a CSIP and they call it a strategic plan. Some write what would be a strategic plan and call it a CSIP. They're two different things. And I'm not going to read the whole chart to you, but in a nutshell, your strategic plan addresses the entire organization, how that organization is going to grow, develop, remain viable to achieve our mission. The CSIP is much more focused. It is an operational plan. It focuses on what we're going to do to improve our students' performance, whereas the strategic plan is directed at organizational performance. Next slide, please. So how are we going to tell if this all makes any difference with our district? We're going to be developing, and we're working on right now, 3 different performance measures. First one is key performance indicators. Those are more administrative, more at the department level. They identify specific targets, specific goals, and then measure how well that department, that part of the organization is meeting those goals. Focuses on the things that are critical, and it focuses on results. Next slide, please. So right now, we're looking at KPIs for human resources, for operations, and in instruction. Those are the 3 big buckets that we've identified. Next slide, please. We're also working on a district dashboard. Think of your car, and you've got some measures on your car, your gas, temperature, tachometer, oil levels. Those are there so that you can see at any time how well your car is doing on those things. If you're driving your car and you see that you're running out of gas, you know you have to stop and get gas. So a dashboard is those few things that are important but are immediately actionable. So our plan is that we will be periodically giving our district dashboard to the board to look at. And if we identify things that are happening that that require adjustments, we will make those adjustments. Next slide, please. So as far as our dashboard, we're looking at things, some of the things we might be looking at: support technology gives, transportation, maybe how long routes are, how long it takes to route a student, human resources, how many vacancies there are, what levels of diversity the district is achieving in hiring, staff injuries, student performance. Those are all things that we can make changes in a very short time to address if they're showing that there are some problems with them. Next slide, please. And then the final performance measure is our balanced scorecard. A balanced scorecard originally came out of Harvard, and it was for businesses to show both, for example, how well they operate and how well they produce their product, or how profitable their product is. A balanced scorecard in a school district balances student performance and operational performance. So, how are our buses running? How are our finances? How are our students performing? They're lagging indicators. It's an annual report. It is intended to be public, and it is aligned with the district's mission, vision, and values. Next slide, please. So we're looking at things again: operations, human resources, and students. Down at the bottom, you see that asterisk statement, targeted districts. Those are 5 districts that are at risk, that have poor performance, and we need to focus on those districts. Those districts would also be the focus of a lot of our equity work. So we will be looking at the balanced scorecard also in light of how those districts perform. Next slide, please. So, how are we going to do this all? Well, the district has an improvement model called Strategic and Responsive Solutions. I call it SRS because SSD loves acronyms. The SRS is a consistent model that is systematic. It's a process to be followed in working to improve the district's performance. Some of the big steps are, first, to identify the problem, understand the issue, and vision. Where do you want to be? Today we had a meeting and another step is to identify who's going to work on implementing this. Today we had a meeting where we identified people who are targeted to work on the CSIP plan and the strategic plan. Then once you start implementing, that's where you set your objectives, your action steps, your measures, all of those things. We plan to start implementing the plan on July 1st, which is the same date that we plan to start implementing the district's new CSIP. Next slide. So, what do we have to do yet? We got to finalize our performance measures. There are some cases where we think these are important data to measure the district's performance, but they're either not available, they're not available in a usable form, they're not available in a form that is easily understandable. So we got to finalize all those things. We need to finalize our groundwork to implement. We need to identify our teams, we need to set the structure for all that. And then we need to obtain approval from the governing council. Once we have those 3 things, we will be ready to start going full speed in July. Next slide, please. Any questions? Yes, sir.
I do. Thank you for this information. To have a roadmap and to know whether we're actually getting where we want to go.
Yeah.
Make this work. I'm curious on slide 6, just as to illustrate for us, if we're talking about developing administrators' skill set for strategic priority setting, can you give us maybe some idea of what that might look like? How does that go?
We need to reorient our thinking so that all of our actions, all of our decisions administratively are oriented toward what needs to be done to help our students achieve their greatest potential. That's the strategic part of it. So it might be a question of critical thinking. It might be a question of system to identify priorities, things like that.
So there are some processes and activities in mind that you have?
Well, the teams will be working on those.
I want to say thank you for slide 12. You're going to see such a strategic plan.
You're welcome.
And I want to ask if you can please continue to include that slide very early on in the presentation. I'm one of the people who's asked that question, and I have 4 members, so this is very helpful.
Great, thank you.
Every time, thank you.
That was my same comment. I was going to ask, should we start with that? Because when we did this in front of the governing council, questions all seemed, nobody could tell a difference between a CSIP and a strategic plan. And he kept going back to it, and I'm not sure everybody even grasped it once they were done, based on the question.
Yeah, and as I said, some of those districts who are adopting CSIPs and calling them strategic plans, they're in St. Louis County.
Yeah. So I was hoping next time we do this in front of the governing council, save this slide and start off with it, because I think we wouldn't. I thought the questions primarily dealt with CSIP rather than strategic plan, and couldn't see how there was a difference.
Yeah.
So I thought it might be a good idea to keep this slide forever and always start off with this.
Good. Thank you for that input. And again, the strategic plan is big picture. It addresses the entire organization, the entire district. Whereas the CSIP is very focused. It focuses on those specific steps that the district is going to take to improve student performance.
Any other questions?
Thank you all.
Thank you, Paul.
Wow.
Now, paraprofessional support.
Good evening, Dr. Cuneo, Vice President Patroff, Board of Directors. My name is Molly Bolton, and I am the Executive Director of Teaching, Learning, and Accountability. And tonight I have with me Kevin Carr, who is the professional learning facilitator. You guys heard a lot about him last time, so we brought him. He is a real person. And we also have Ben Kelly, who is our Director of Human Resources.
I too am a girl. Thank you. Good evening. The purpose of tonight is really just to kind of review some metrics in the hiring process that we were asked to kind of clarify a little bit, centered around the resignation component. And then also, as Molly alluded to, can really provide an update and highlight on the para-training program that Kevin's kind of working through. So again, the slide in front of you is what's submitted on a weekly basis. I think it's important to note that those are not board dates; those are weekly submission dates. So we want to make sure that that's kind of at the forefront. And as you look at it, what we've added, and hopefully it's clear on your slide, the small little red is the resignation. So we track resignations that are received on a weekly basis. So as you can see, starting as we really started the strategic planning for addressing our paraprofessional shortages, we really kind of wanted that as a metric to drive. So, high, 12, 10, 5. So again, we do receive resignations on a regular basis, so I think it's important to kind of highlight that work, because sometimes, we may hire 12 teacher assistants, and then we would have 10 submit resignations. So that's kind of that chart to your left that kind of shows that net gain, if you will. Next slide, please. We're also kind of asked to provide a little bit of an update on kind of our total para resignation. So what we were able to do is go back a few years and really start looking at our 1920, 2021, and current. Current, when I say current, it's through 12/1. So 187 in 1920, 2021 is 200, and then we're through roughly 58 through roughly 12/1. Obviously, the paraprofessionals, the bulk of those resignations and retirements do come in May, June, and a little bit July. So for the most part, people are finishing out that year and then submitting a letter of resignation. And so that's why those numbers are a little bit higher, a lot higher in those months. Next slide, please. So this really kind of highlights Frontline Education as our partner that we use for our application system. And really, what they're showing is across the nation, 35%, I would bet that's probably a low estimate, of school districts are grappling with paraprofessional shortages. So we're not alone in that. It's kind of a nationwide kind of issue that is plaguing school districts.
Slide, please. So we know this has been a problem throughout the years. In fact, we did a para retention study in 2018. And this is a summary of the findings as well as the recommendations. Some things I'd like to highlight were, the findings really talked about our paras feeling prepared with a lot of training to go into the classroom, and then respect and recognition. And some of the recommendations that came out of that is really looking at strengthening our professional learning for our para educators. And there's some other things there too, which I'll let you go ahead and read. And then also, nurturing and respecting the recognition for our paraprofessionals. Next slide, please. So we developed an onboard training. About the same time as we started developing this, DESE did come out with a requirement that paraprofessionals are required 9 hours of professional learning before they come into a classroom. And we had already started working on that, so we were a little bit ahead of the game there. And we developed a new para academy, very similar to our new teacher academy, in order to support our new paraprofessionals. We really looked at targeting the program for those things that paras would need to walk into our classrooms and be able to be a part of the team and support our students. And we also realized that the para, looking at the amount of paras we hired and having this amount of training, we would need a person dedicated to that role. So with that, next slide, please. We did come to you last year and asked for a new position, which you granted us. Thank you for that. And this is a little bit of the job description, and you can see the name. So we originally had it, and Kelly will attest to this, paraprofessional learning facilitator. But some folks were a little confused that the role would be professional learning for our paraeducators. So with that, we were able to hire Kevin Farr. Next slide. And so Kevin is going to talk a little bit about the onboarding process that we have in place.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Farr, paraprofessional professional learning facilitator. We have developed, like Molly was saying, our 3-day onboarding process and training for new paras before they get into the classroom. So as soon as they're hired and their HR onboarding processes are finished, their first day on the job is with me doing the parent trainings at the Learning Center. So I'll just give you a brief overview of what we do during these 3 days. Firstly, on day 1, we start with some of the tech pieces. There are quite a few tech pieces that we need paras to understand to be able to navigate, like Outlook and workforce management and safe schools and different things. They often come in with a little bit of anxiety about those things. So we make sure all logins work. We do all that stuff so they feel comfortable with operating their tech pieces. Then we are moving into our scope of what a paraprofessional does, and then what would fall outside of the scope. So we have some interactive activities we do with the paras at this time, where I'll give them lists of what would fall under a para scope, what might fall under a teacher's, and what might fall under an administrator's. For a lot of our paras, they don't come to us from a school environment. We get paras from all over the place, so they may not be familiar with the structure of a school and how it operates. So that kind of activity does real well to helping them understand what it falls underneath their scope. One of the most impactful things we do, though, during day one is we talk about inclusive and person-first language. So we are getting people with great intentions, who have empathy, who want to work with kids, but they're coming from us. We had a retired firefighter last week. We get people from Boeing. We get people from all over the place, and they don't always have the education inclusivity language down. And so they're very eager to learn about how to talk to our kids with dignity, to recognize and with respect, and to recognize them as more than just their exceptionality. And so that piece of the training normally goes over pretty well. And of course, we spend a lot of time talking about different disabilities that the paras will encounter in the classroom, particularly autism. We spend a lot of time on that. We do go through a bit about ethics, talk about confidentiality and mandated reporting, and a lot of those things that fall under their, that would impact their job as well. And then we spend the majority of the afternoon on handling student behavior. So we know from para feedback that they report that this is one of the more difficult things about their position, and so we want to make sure that we're giving them strategies about how to de-escalate students and how to properly have those restorative conversations. So we spend a good deal of day one on that. Day two, we come with a check-in. How are you feeling? What stressors are you having still? What are you still uncertain about? You're about to start in your school building in a couple of days. I want to make sure that you are prepared and feeling good about your decision to take our position here. So we have an open kind of forum discussion that is oftentimes very impactful and meaningful for the paras. And then we'll spend the rest of the morning talking about the instructional process, how we can aid the teachers in instruction and always be working towards helping our students achieve more autonomy, helping them become more independent and fading out our para support. We'll spend a bit of time on the IEP process. A lot of the SPED language and terms that we use aren't always familiar to them at the first, so we spend some time going through some of that vocabulary so they feel comfortable with that. And then we move into the NCI part of the training. We'll go through de-escalation strategies and crisis modeling, and then, of course, the nonviolent crisis intervention strategies as well on day 3.
On this slide, you can see this comes from our evaluations. Our end at this time was from November 2nd. We have had more training since then, but that when we prepared this PowerPoint for approval, that was the date we used. You can see our end was 123 respondents. And overall, the participants are rating this very, very high. They feel like that they're increasing their knowledge. They feel comfortable. They really feel like they're getting things that they can take into the classroom and apply right away. Next slide.
So this is data from a confidence survey that we give to the paras at the very beginning before we start anything on day 1, and then they take this at the end of day 3. And you can see that they feel like in each of the 6 main categories that we cover over those 3 days of training, their confidence level in their knowledge of each of those has increased significantly there. Then we conducted a survey of first and second year paras, and we had 101 respondents. So in this survey, we just asked them about their career ambitions and what is it, how long, how do you view this position as a para? So we had 47% say that they did consider this job a long-term job, that they wanted to stay working as a para with SSD for 5 years or greater. We had 22% that were viewing it more as a short-term job, but then more importantly to me was this 36% that said they were working as a para and are planning to work at a different level in education. whether that's growing into a teacher or a school psych or a speech path or into one of our administrators. So this is a group of people I think we can put some focus on and really cultivate those people.
As you can see here, we pulled out a couple of the comments that came from our evaluation. A couple things I'd like to highlight here. The first one really talks about that people-first language and how that's going to impact them outside the workforce. So you can see we're really providing that education for folks, and they're able to apply that in their lives. The second one really talks about the time that Kevin takes to really go over the information with them. And the thing that stood out to me is the line that says, this is the first time in my 11 years of education that anyone has ever taken the time to explicitly and thoughtfully stamp specific tasks that we should and shouldn't do. And they felt very supported. So we wanted to highlight these for you because we feel that they really speak to the heart of what we wanted to get at with this program. Next slide.
So the 3-day training that I had just highlighted is part of our Year 1 Academy program for new paras. So I am supporting them throughout the year with different check-ins and different other professional development pieces, but that's for Year 1. So our grand plan is this 3-year Academy program for paras. So they'll finish Year 1 and then move into Year 2, and then next year we'll be rolling out Year 3 of this academy. So what they would do is with their supervisor, they will choose one of 4 strains of modules that they will focus on and grow in. So we have a behavior management, literacy, numeracy, and autism courses that are all designed with our professional development team. So the para with their supervisor would choose which one best suits them in their position, and then in both Year 2 and in Year 3, they would go and follow that same course. So there's an introductory course they'll do in Year 2, and then an advanced one they'll do in Year 3. So all of this training that we give them up front is important to them, but we want to support them throughout the year, and we want to show appreciation to them, and we want them to feel valued. And so we have a few things in place to help with that. We have our professional learning website, which I'll pull up briefly here. So this website, occasionally technology can be a barrier for some of our new paras, and so the idea behind this was to create sort of a one-stop shop of resources and links that the paras can use for professional development. And so we have links for each of the three years of para development. And then we have our newsletter that's linked there, as well as our recognition for a para of the month at the bottom of that. So with that website, we also have a discussion board. So we have this just open to all paras in the district. Post questions at the beginning of the month, and it's like a forum that they can use to go on and to answer and to interact with other paras in the district. So this is something they can do on their time that doesn't take a lot of time investment, but still gives them an opportunity to hear from what other people are doing in their same position. We also do a monthly newsletter that offers paras a chance to kind of reflect on what they've been doing, and then a challenge for the upcoming month for them as well. And then I've been doing office hours where paraprofessionals can talk to me about different needs that they have, and we can troubleshoot any problems that they're having. And then one important thing that we've been doing is recognizing paras who are doing a great job. So we have on the Para Learning website an opportunity for any staff member to submit an appreciation form for a para who's doing exceptional work. Those forms come to me, and then I will reach out to those paras and thank them and congratulate them for their work. And then we choose a para of the month each month to receive a small prize package, and then I interview them for the website. So we had Katie there on the left-hand side from Pattonville. She works at Pattonville High School. with students who are nonverbal, and she's been doing fantastic work there. And then Emily on the right-hand side works in Rockwood, and she works in an autism room. They were both nominated by multiple people in their building.
So we did have a couple of videos, but we're unable to show them to you this evening. But we will, the links are in there, but we'll also email you the links tomorrow. We'll have Amy email those links out so you can view those. The first one is a peer who's been with us for quite a while, and just her giving her input about this program. She actually has worked with Kevin before, and just really talking about one of the things that caused her to stay here was having a mentor or a leader in her building who really took her under her wing and really helped her. And then the next video we have, if you want to go to the next slide, is one of our new paras who's actually gone through the program with Kevin this year, and talking about his experience. He came from corporate, and his wife is also in education, and so he had retired and decided to become a para. And so he talked a little bit about his experience with the onboarding process and the program. So some really great things for you to listen to. So I encourage you to take some time when we get those links sent to you to really check that out. Slide, please. And lastly, we just wanted to point out that of the 200 plus pairs that began with us July 1st or later, that have participated in the program, only 5 have resigned. So that's pretty good retention. Now we open it for questions.
I have a bunch. Sorry.
A bunch?
But
Okay.
No, it's all good because I'm very invested. Okay. How many hours total is day 1, 2, and 3?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
How many hours total are they in the academy?
So that's just the onboarding day?
Right.
And the onboarding days?
Yeah.
So it's 3 full days
So,
7.5 hours
each day. Yeah.
there we go. Okay, thank you. During those 3 days, now that we know that at any moment we could go back to virtual, is that taught too? Is that part of the technology part of what happens if we go virtual and we have to? Because, oh my golly, you're in your living room having to go into a separate room and all this stuff. Is that part of the technology part?
Yes and no. So we do talk about that possibility of going virtual, and we share a little bit about, the pros and cons of what has worked for us and what hasn't. And then I share the links that the technology department has created for how to use Zoom.
Right.
And things like that. So those are given to them in a paper handout, and I demonstrate the link on the screen. But it's up to them to sort of, if they need that refresher on Zoom, to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, because there's a difference if they use Zoom, like how I use Zoom versus having to create a breakout room and all this stuff. I certainly have no idea how to do that, and that's essential for them. So being able to do that would be excellent. Our mentors, are new parents assigned a mentor, or when they come into a building, or not even just a building, but into our program?
So we do encourage our administrators to assign a mentor from the building that they're.
Perfect.
Part of their onboarding is also, or part of their first year para training is to shadow a veteran para also. So they do 2 half-day shadows. And then the idea is that person would become sort of a connecting piece.
Perfect. That's so important to talk to someone who's been boots on the ground in that building with those students. And then I love all of this. So can any para, especially ones that have come to us in the past couple of years where the pandemic threw everything up in the air, can they sign up for this?
So you'll notice, if you look at the chart, and I did print the chart a little bit bigger for you guys, that green column is for existing paras, veteran paras we call them, and so they are able to access. A lot of our offerings, besides the 3-day is in person, but many of our offerings are asynchronous. And we did that for a variety of reasons, but one being when districts have professional learning days, oftentimes our paras are not included in the teacher trainings and things like that. And so, this gives them the ability to have some high-quality professional learning asynchronously. And then they could also access those anytime they choose as well. But it really, a structured time would be when they have a professional learning day. Administrators and teachers can say, hey, watch this, and get some good learning.
Perfect. And then last but most important, shout out to Tommy Farrah, Mr. Mack, who Tommy has been putting through the ringer this year. Beating him up. High five, he deserves it.
So you can go onto that website and get your recognition for. Appreciation for.
Yep.
That would be awesome.
That's what I'll be doing.
Any other questions?
It feels like we're really on the right track with this one, so thank you for your.
We actually just had someone reach out to us this week from Indiana, and we are going to be able to present at Indiana MOCASE. It's a virtual conference, that they were so impressed with our program that they were like, hey, we want to get the word out about this, so will you present to us? So we're excited about that.
Ms. Golden, what's the possibility of pushing this to MSBA as the next conference? This would be one of the things people would be very interested in.
Yeah, I think we could very much do a proposal for that.
Since we had no special ed in the entire
Correct. This
conference.
would be a great way, and even for general education paraprofessionals.
Yeah. I mean, this would be interesting to everybody.
We'll look into that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All righty? Technology is next.
Good evening, Dr. Cuneo, Directors of the Board of Education, Dr. Keenan. I'm Doug Austin, Chief Technology Officer for Special School District, and I'm here to present the 5-year plan. So we'll start with a brief mission statement of the department, what our responsibilities are, our current staffing levels, our priorities and projects working on from fiscal year 2022 to fiscal year 2026, and our proposed budget. And any questions? Go ahead, next slide. So our mission of our department is to support education, support and facilitate all of SSD's efforts for student success by developing and implementing technology solutions that meet the district's needs. Slide. Brief rundown of the various responsibilities that fall under our department. Brief. We support all of the devices that are in hands of all the staff members. We support all of the technology that's used to connect those devices so that they have access to internet resources. We also provide access to data and reporting and provide general support for all of our teachers utilizing our information systems. Next slide. Next. Sorry, you want to? Our current staffing levels, sorry about that. Our current staffing levels, we have 37 staff members currently in our department. We have Chief Technology Officer, myself. We are broken up into 3 basic work groups. We have an administrative assistant that handles all of our clerical work and supports the staff. We have a technology support group that includes 17 individuals. That includes desktop support technicians that are deployed to each of our schools, a service staff that answers calls and helps the staff on the phone. We also have a facilitator that helps with providing support to teachers using mobile devices and applications and all the Google Suite and Google Classroom. We have a systems and network infrastructure team. They're responsible for all of our network servers, all of our network devices, connectivity, internet access, filtering, and security. Projects and innovation, that includes our development operations team, all of our programmer analysts, our project manager, and we have our facilitators that support our special education information management system that handles all of our IEPs. So over the next 5 years, we're going to continue our same sets of priorities that support our mission at SSD. So one of our big responsibilities is to make sure that technology is deployed to their classrooms to support students in learning. That includes all teachers, paraprofessionals, and student-facing devices that are used for education. We want to eliminate any redundancies that we have in systems. Over the years, we have lots of various systems and legacy systems. We're trying to streamline all of that and get more efficiency within our operational teams within the district and make sure that the technology supports their mission and they have an efficient, effective way of supporting the district. Centralized technology purchasing is kind of part of both of those things. So right now we're in our first year of rolling that out. We'll be facilitating ordering all the devices, making sure that we are using the proper entitlements for licensing and any contracts that are required for software as a service or subscription applications that are being deployed to teachers, operational staff, students, paraprofessionals. Security monitoring is always a big part of our job here, so we can continue with making sure that we have security controls in place and we're using security best practices as best as we possibly can to secure all of the data that we're guardians of supporting education, including student and employee data. Networks and systems of resiliency, building in more redundant capabilities of our network connectivity and internet access so that we don't have outages and there is no interruption to classroom learning. Data sharing, again, trying to make sure that we have data and dashboards and reports that are available to administrators, teachers, and operational staff so that they can make the best decisions possible to support our students in their learning endeavors. And then innovation and transformation, again, crosses all of these things. So looking for key opportunities for improving the way that we do things and transforming the way technology is utilized in the classroom to support learning. So for the 21-22 fiscal year, we have a series of projects that we're currently in process and working on. So under technology support, we're deploying mobile devices and mobile device management systems across all the devices that we've deployed. We're previously using a vendor called FileWave. We've been migrating that over to another vendor called Mosel for most of our Apple-based products and devices. So that's in progress. We're moving those over, and as we add those devices into the new system or buy new devices pre-configured with that Mosel system, we'll reduce our spending on our previous vendor. Standard toolkit for the classrooms, we deployed external speakers, monitors, headsets, a variety of devices across all the classrooms. We also deployed a series of tech hubs, as we call them, that contain the Chromebooks and charging cables and things like that, so everything is ready in each of the classrooms. Those have all been completed and deployed. We're getting feedback from the teachers how well those are working, so over the next 3 years we'll be adapting and adding more as new technology becomes available for classroom learning. Asset management and technology hardware. So again, all these devices that we're deploying, we're tracking and making sure that we have a good inventory of all devices that are deployed. Particularly difficult for a special school district because we deploy devices in other school districts' networks. So it makes it hard to keep track of all of the changes and devices changing hands and where they're at a given time. But we're working on making sure that we have good inventories and we use those inventories to know what devices need to be replaced or good refresh cycles so that we have good, viable devices in all the classrooms across all the counties. For our infrastructure, we're working on, seems like we're constantly working on network upgrades because we're always doing more and more with more devices and need more and more access for the students. So this year's project were the Northview and Ackerman schools. So that's currently in progress. The reason that has not been completed is because of supply chain issues. There's been a nationwide slowdown of technology resources being available to be purchased. So we have several devices that were purchased and ordered that have not arrived yet, but they're starting to arrive now, and we're starting to roll those out. So we should have those upgrades done by the spring. Transportation, we had a series of transportation projects that we completed in the last year. That includes wireless cameras on the school buses. So, previously we were deploying camera system in the school buses that recorded the tape, so somebody had to pull the tape off the bus and then go review that if there was an incident. So we deployed wireless network access points at all of our garages, so that those buses, when they pull into the garage, the data feed from those cameras can be uploaded to a server on the network, as opposed to having to pull those tapes. So those were put in place over the summer from June to August, as those cameras were outfitted on the buses and everything was set. All the buses have been outfitted with a mounting unit and a tablet, so that the bus drivers can take positive attendance for the students that are riding the bus, and then also keep any relevant information or notes that the bus drivers need for those particular trips. And then parent app, we have GPSs installed in all of our buses. Those GPSs are now configured to communicate with our internet service that provides a parent app, so parents can check in on when their bus is arriving at schools, bus stops, and things like that, and roll that out. So the technology piece of that is all completed. The transportation department is working on communicating that out and getting parents to opt into that application. Network access and control, again, some of the components for this system have not come in yet because of the supply chain issues, but most of the devices are in now. And so again, sometime before the end of the school year, we should have the network access control and management solution in place. And then security incident and response and expanded security monitoring systems, those have been completed. So we're utilizing a combination of multiple security controls that feed into our ticketing system and allow us to track any security incidents that come up and make sure that we're responding as quickly and as appropriately as we can to ongoing threats facing the district. Next slide. Technology for operations. We're in the process of a project to migrate from our current enterprise resource planning application that handles all of our financials, procurement, distribution, inventory control, payroll, all of those systems tied into this application. So we're migrating that to a new application. So that's been started. We're underway with getting data migrated over to that application and working with the vendor doing that, and then training all the departments on the changes for the new application. So that, again, that's going to be a multi-year project. So we're starting it this year, and then it'll go into next year as well. Licensing and contract management, like I mentioned before, trying to get a handle on all of the services, all of the subscriptions, all of the different licensing, and making sure that we're using our volume purchasing ability to make any purchases that allow us to get better discounts, make sure that teachers have access to all the applications and entitlements and licenses that we have available. Home innovation, working on an online homebound application. This allows previously all of our parents that were requesting homebound services for their students went through a paper-based process, filling out forms, faxing or sending it into our office. So we're rolling out a online application where they can fill that out online and don't have to rely on filling out paper forms and sending those in and waiting to see how everything goes. It'll be a more efficient process for our homebound department and for all of the constituents of the county utilizing homebound services. Data sharing with partner districts is kind of an ongoing thing, working with providing access to all the partner districts we work with so that they can access data that we have and we can access data that they have through a secure communication channel. That's ongoing and being expanded. We do have a secure channel established with access for all the partner districts to access that information, to pull data from us and also be able to send data to us through that same channel. Transition service desk to the cloud. So that's ongoing. That's completed as so right now. So all of our knowledge base, all of our help desk services are in the cloud. There's one last piece to migrate to the cloud, and that will be finished completely migrating to the cloud this summer. Work processes for different applications. Our ERP process, our ERP project is tackling a whole bunch of those. We had a lot of separate ancillary applications in addition to our ERP system. So the ERP system we're moving to has more of those features and functions built in, so we don't have to have all of these separate ancillary applications. Hopefully that'll streamline and reduce a lot of the extra steps required for operational staff to complete some of their processes. And we're working on a portfolio management process, keeping track of all of the projects that we have going on, what are the priorities, where each of those are, and how they align to the strategic. Now support for FY23 and the new proposed budget going forward. Again, moving all of our devices, more mobile devices that we're purchasing to a new mobile device management system. Streamlining printing services. We have a managed print services contract. I'm going to look at how we're handling all our printing, who has access to printing, make sure everyone has appropriate print access, and that we're not overpaying for consumables or redundant devices and things like that. That's something that we're going to be tackling next fiscal year as we renew that or reevaluate that printing management contract. More wireless upgrades next year. We're targeting our North Technical High School. We upgraded that several years ago to support the one-to-one program for that system. So some of those devices are getting older, so we want to replace those and make them match the newer devices that we have in all of our other buildings. That part of that project is, modernization of our network infrastructure, especially in the North Tech building and all of our other buildings to fall in line with more modern network configurations and devices that we've been deploying as we've upgraded all of the buildings, and basically bringing everything in line to the newer technology. Replacing our storage area network. Our storage area network contains all of our data, all of our files, all of our databases are all part of this basically series of devices that store data on our system. The ones that we currently have, we purchased several years ago. So we're going to forklift upgrade that to have more capacity, higher speed, more access, and more redundancy. Next fiscal year. Central office remodel. The remodel plan for this building is going to require quite a lot of construction. Our main data center, internet connection, and most of our network connectivity funnels through this building for that. So in order to prevent any disruption to all of our buildings and make sure that students have access to the internet consistently through that construction, we'll need to relocate our data center out of this building. And also we have to, because a lot of things are connected through this building for internet access, we'll have to add some additional network circuits and connections to our buildings. The new owner building next door will need a new circuit. Several other buildings will need to add in some circuits to replace the ones that they all funnel through this building. So there's some costs associated with that for next year's budget that we'll have to assume in order to smoothly transition as we do the remodel for this building. And then again, more security controls and streamlining our security controls, make sure that we're properly using all of our best practices and are monitoring the security of all of the data that we're responsible for. Right. The implementation of the ERP system that I talked about earlier, enterprise resource planning. In the next fiscal year, we'll be finalizing that, going live on most of the modules, training all the staff on that new system, and there'll be some parallel operations of the two systems while we migrate into the new one. So there'll be some costs associated with maintaining the existing system over and all the staff are comfortable. Innovation, more automation on our software and data integrations that we have in place. So we'll be working on improving those and adding a more automated system for how we handle the way that we deploy data integrations, new software that we have created, and reports, dashboards, and data extracts that are used by the district. Year 24, major projects that we want to look at is a refresh of the devices that we've deployed to all of our schools. A lot of those devices were purchased specifically because of the COVID shutdown. So going into fiscal year 24, we'll be looking at how are we going to refresh these devices as they start coming to end of life on the life cycle of those devices. Like I mentioned before, we'll be looking at our standard toolkit that we're putting out for all of the classrooms and all of our buildings, and looking at, in 4 years, what does that look like? How does that, how does the new technology integrate in the classroom? What we need to add or supplement in the technology that's available in all the schools. And then we'll be planning our Southview and South Tech wireless network upgrades in fiscal year 24. And our current contract with our wide area network that connects all of our buildings will be up for review. So we'll review whether or not we need to increase speeds, keep them the same, change the way that we're connecting, rebid out that, develop those circuits to the vendors. We'll be looking at our telecommunication system in this year as well. Again, current telecommunication system we put in a couple of years ago. So in 2024, we'll be looking at, do we renew that? Do we change that? Do we expand that? Do we look at different options for telecommunications? Centralized data storage for student records. It would really take a hard look at how we're storing active and inactive or archived data for all of our students, how we make that accessible to staff quickly, and how it's all protected. That's all. More automation, again, for innovation, and then making sure that we're automating data and sharing data with all the partner districts. Fiscal year 25, that will be the year where we would be replacing most of those student devices and also the paraprofessional devices that we've deployed through the district, through all the partner districts. One of the things that I'm evaluating and we'll be looking at this year, putting out an RFP. We have an RFP that we're going to release here in December for a lease agreement to see if we can lease devices instead of paying for them up front. If we go to a lease model when it comes time to refresh these one-to-one paraprofessional devices and all the other devices that we've purchased over the last couple of years, then we can spread those costs over 4 years instead of having one big giant spend 1 year and then a few years later have to do another big large spend again. More wireless upgrades planning for fiscal year 25. It would be our learning center, distribution center, and garages that we're mainly target to upgrade all the network and wireless. Another thing that we're expanding is more cloud-based services for our infrastructure. So this allows us to utilize cloud-based storage and cloud-based connectivity, as opposed to buying devices on premises, having to refresh those, replace those every few years. So basically trying to, again, similar to the leasing idea, use cloud-based services for some of these items so that we, instead of having these big upfront costs, this just becomes a part of operational budget for the next several years. Next slide. Streamline our software as a service solution that's all over subscriptions and cloud-based applications that we're using. We could to look forward to what new applications will be available and how we could modernize the applications that we're using on all of our systems. And then we want to look at our special education applications, specifically our IEP application, how that is operating in that year. We want to see any expansions, any changes, any new innovations that we can take advantage of for that system, because it will be several years that we've been on that same system. And then also FY26, teacher and staff 4-year refresh cycle. By this time, we'll have all of that on a standard refresh cycle through centralized purchasing. And again, if we're using a leasing model, at that point, we would be renewing the lease for those devices. Streamlining our software as a service again, and any changes that we need or new systems that we need to put in place for that special education information system or IEP system, we would be targeting FY20. Slide. So, proposed budget for next year, we have a increase based on replacing our storage area network, all the costs associated with changing the ERP system and migrating into new ERP system, and then that central office remodel with the data center move and all of the additional circuits we have to put in place so that there's no disruption in internet access to any of our buildings. And then after that year, things should go back down again for the next several years. And then if we target FY25 to look at that leasing model for the 4-year refresh of the student and paraprofessional devices, this is kind of what it would look like. Instead of a major upswing, it would be a smaller upswing that would just be spread out over the next several years. Any questions?
Yes, one of the second slide, what was disaster? Second slide. Yes, there we go, disaster recovery.
Oh, disaster recovery and continuity planning. So that's to make sure in case there's a major catastrophic event that would hit our data center or any of our schools, that we have contingency plans in place to make sure that those are operational. So currently within our district, we have a disaster recovery center that mirrors our data center, and it's at our Southview school, the new addition that we did in our Southview a few years ago. They added a data center there for us, and we have equipment out there so that we replicate data and send backups of all of the servers that we have here at our central office down to there. So if something catastrophic was to happen to our data center here, we could stand up that system down in our Southview disaster recovery and bring everything back online. We're also replicating data to the cloud, so there may be opportunities for us to have some of the systems that would normally be housed within our data center housed in the cloud instead, so that those services would be available to our staff and students across the county through the cloud, for any cloud connection, if we couldn't establish a direct network connection from one of our buildings here because of a disaster. So those are all part of our disaster recovery and continuity planning plans that we put together. And we evaluate those every year, and we look for new changes in technology that allow us to take better advantage of that and put in safeguards in place so that we can operate in the event of some unforeseen disaster.
Second question was, are we still happy with our IEP programming, computer programming? I know that we leased it, got rid of it, then all of a sudden we decided, well, we were going to build our own, then we didn't build our own. We decided that these individuals could keep us up to date, even though a separate group came in, if I remember right, they took over the changes. How's that working?
So far it's been working really well. The company that originally had purchased the software and had worked with us to build it out, they were purchased by another company, a company called BrightBytes. BrightBytes has continued to develop the application, and it's part of their roadmap for their future of their company. So far they've been growing it and working with us very closely in a way where it's been it's been doing everything we needed to do, and all the updates that come in from the federal government or the state, we've been able to incorporate into that system. On the plan, I do have evaluation of that to look at how this is working still, and do we need to go a different direction? And then in FY26, we would be moving in that direction if we need to make any changes.
Because we had talked about developing our own, what the crossword was presented in a work study.
Yes.
And it was decided at that time to continue with the computer programming that was already there, even though they were people that originally developed it left.
Correct.
And sold off a percentage to another group spun off of it. So we're still happy.
Yeah. So far they've updated everything we've asked them. They've stayed current with technology. They've developed their system based on our recommendations, and they've been continuing to grow that. Even after the Bright Bites acquisition, their Bright Bites is still looking to continue to expand that application to other school districts and continue to work with that application. So if that changes, we'll have to keep evaluating that. But at any rate, I think we should take a good look at how the application is working for us, and if there's any other alternatives at that point. And it could mean that we continue with Bright Bites, but ask them to make some additional changes, or depending on how they're positioning the IEP system within their ecosphere of applications. They have a whole suite of education-based applications that they provide, including data analysis and surveys and things like that. So it's still, they're looking to make that a core part of their offering for the near future. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
You were, talking about security
Yes.
breaches. Are you talking about like hackers, or is that what we're, and is that something that we actually deal with a lot during the day? Or is that just in case we get hit?
So it's we have measures in place to protect us from any would-be intruder that's trying to access data that we have on our systems illegally. We also have measures in place to prevent malicious software from getting into our system and destroying that data or disrupting our operations. Keeping our data from being leaked, and this includes not just data that we have within our own data center, but anytime we have a subscription with a cloud-based application, we also look at the security of those providers as well, and verify that those providers, whether we're talking about Google or whether we're talking about, we have this application called FastBridge, which does like assessments and things like that. Those are all cloud hosted. So we look at those all as well. It's a very real threat, and more school districts are being targeted by very specific attacks where they're specifically going for student information. The criminals have found a way to monetize going after student information. It includes just disrupting your operation, and so you pay them to stop disrupting it as a way for them making money, or just, the more nefarious part of it is actually getting a hold of personally identifiable information for students and selling that to people that could use that to establish lines of credit in the name of the student, which would be, devastating for families and students. So all of those fall into what we do for monitoring. So we're looking at for hackers that are trying to get from the outside into our systems, hackers that are trying to get malicious software into our systems, and hackers that are going after cloud-based services that we're utilizing that may have information that's valuable.
Didn't we have at one time our staff benefits programming? Wasn't that happening?
Yeah. So we had what's called a phishing attack, where malicious emails are sent, bogus emails are sent to staff members to try to get them to give them their credentials, and then they use those credentials to access their information that we had online for the benefits that are available to staff members. We were able to contain that. We did offer credit protection for the staff that were impacted because their credentials were lost, and we were able to validate, which staff members' credentials were compromised versus which weren't, and then we added security measures in place, including multi-factor authentication, so that in the future, it requires more than just guessing at or getting someone to give you their password to get in. There's actually either an app on your phone or a number that it calls you to verify that you're trying to access the system. So we put those measures in place to further protect those credentials. But that's always changing. There's always more threats. There's always more ways to get in, and so that's why we keep investing in security controls and bringing that in.
You've got a lot on your plate.
Thank you.
Very impressive. A scenario I remember very well in the middle of COVID, and like to be on the tail end of all this, was Zooming with students and having connectivity issues. Right and left, the calls would drop and everything, and I know that Parkway was there with Tech Help Desk to solve those problems. I don't remember students with services, getting services with SSD, having those issues. When that has happened, and maybe still in the future, whether it be North County or West or wherever, what kind of responsibility does SSD assume in those situations? How do we problem solve? And with information to the partner districts, how does that go?
So I try to keep an open relationship with all the partner districts, and when a connectivity issue arises, I usually reach out. I try to figure out how we can problem solve together. We collaborate a lot. Jason Rooks and myself, we come up with a lot of plans on things. A lot of times we're a little bit different because of the type of applications and services we're offering, or maybe the ones that they're not so familiar with in the general education setting. So it's very important that we talk back and forth about things that I know. For example, we rolled out Zoom for our students early on, and originally I believe Parkway was going a different direction with Google Hangouts. But for us, it seemed like Zoom fit the bill because of all the different Google credentials and different staff members. We could have a separate Zoom presence for that. So we worked through that and got those applications allowed on their network and troubleshooted any connectivity issues. There were a lot of connectivity issues at the beginning of COVID because everything ramped up and everybody was online, and Zoom and Google and a lot WebEx and a lot of these providers that were providing the online learning environments really didn't anticipate the load that all that was going to put on their network, so they had to kind of scramble to catch up. So it kind of went in both directions. Sometimes it was the provider didn't have enough capacity for all the connections that they were getting, and then other times it was partner districts or home networks or internet service providers in the local area that couldn't handle the volume of it. So we tried to work through that. In some cases, we provided additional hotspots for students when they couldn't get solid internet at home when they were at home. We worked with partner districts to make sure we had everything we needed. A lot of things like, two examples, we deployed, or the partner district would deploy Chromebooks for students to use for learning, and we might have, let's say, some vision impaired students or students with hearing impairments. And the small screens and being able to see like the transcription text or sign language interpreter on the small screen wasn't working, so we would augment what Parkway had deployed by deploying large monitors that could plug into those Chromebooks so that they could see a larger monitor. So it's been a give and take back and forth with the different districts. Sometimes these problems come up pretty quickly, and we don't have a real good solution just to slap down right away, but we try to collaborate and get something out as quickly as possible to prevent that from disrupting instruction as much as we can.
Are we in the position where we can guarantee connectivity to kids? If the partners district is there with support, we're definitely there with whatever kind of hardware or hotspots?
As much as we can. We have invested in hotspot connectivity, and we actually have multiple vendors because we couldn't source enough to handle all the student demands that we had, so we went with multiple vendors. We have both AT&T and T-Mobile hotspots that we were able to issue out to students. If the partner district is in a situation where they cannot provide, or it's very specific to a need that We have, because of the services we're providing those students, we definitely supply those, devices, like, you know, I mentioned the larger monitors, whether it's hotspots, whether it's a different kind of device. Or a different app, and sometimes it's a different application, they don't have that application to deploy it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
The referral bonus action, please.
Board, President Cuneo, Vice President Petroff, Board of Directors, and Superintendent. I'm Jennifer Henry, the Executive Director of Communications, and tonight I'm here to talk to you about a proposal for an employee recruitment bonus. As part of the hiring committee's work, we've been talking about new and innovative ways to attract candidates to SSD. As you know, there is a current labor shortage. We're having difficulty hiring in some categories. And so we were looking at ways that we could become more attractive to prospective employees. And one of the ideas that we came up with was the referral. Some of our other partner districts are doing something similar, and they're seeing some success with it. One of the things that we wanted to do is make sure that we're competitive with those districts and offer something similar. And as one of the largest employers in the St. Louis area, making ourselves as attractive as possible, I think will benefit us in the long run. So the program is going to be designed to help us find candidates that aren't actively looking, because if we have current employees who are reaching out to their friends to see if they want to, or if they're interested in working in SSD, we might get a wider variety of candidates, and researchers show that you get an improved quality of hire because your quality candidates beget quality candidates. So if you already have quality people working for you, they're going to attract the same kind of quality. So another positive is that it increases new hire retention. A LinkedIn study showed that 46% of employees who were referred remained within their position and with that organization for at least 3 years. So it's going to increase retention. It's also going to save us on time and recruitment costs. And then one of the biggest bonuses that it boosts morale and recognition for our current employees, because they feel trusted and valued, that we would take a recommendation from them, somebody who would be an asset to the company. And they're more engaged when they feel like they have others that they know in the organization. The eligibility and requirements. We recently did some updates to the application process, and on Apple Track now there is a field that lets you designate if you were referred by an employee that you can put that name in there. So to recognize as the referral person, we just have that person, the new employee, put the name in there, and then quarterly that information would be downloaded by each job. So both employees must be employed with the district at the designated payout date. So if the current employee decides to leave, or the new employee leaves before the 90 days, they would not be eligible. If not, people are not eligible if they transfer within the district in a department, or if they're promoted. And as I mentioned, if either employee is no longer with the district, then the bonus is not. A couple of other key eligibility requirements that aren't listed here have to do with who would be eligible as a current employee. So all SSD staff would be eligible to participate in the program for a referral bonus, except any hiring manager or anyone directly involved in the selection of a candidate, managers or supervisors if they referred the individual, and then all HR staff, manager level and above, substitutes, temporary or contracted employees, consultants, and vendors. So we wanted to make sure that by implementing referral bonus, that we also weren't creating any other issues for us by providing an incentive to hire one person over another. So that's why we have this additional requirement.
So as I mentioned, the program will be administered by the Human Resources Department. The bonus amount that we are proposing is $150, which would be paid less taxes after the employee has satisfactorily completed 90 days of employment. And then we have quarterly periods which those bonuses would be issued. And that's to make the program more manageable for our internal staff. One of the key points is that it can only be awarded to one person, so there's only one spot for them to put the name. They can't split the bonus between two people if they know two people in the organization. And you can refer multiple people, so if you've got lots of friends, refer them, you can get bonus more than one. We're hoping that we'll be able to implement the program in early 2022. A couple of things that we want to make sure that we're doing is that we're utilizing the metrics from the program to make sure that we are making sure that it's successful. We want to look at the performance and retention of referred employees. We want to look at referrals versus other recruitment channels. And then we want to look at the percentage of new employees who are hired via referrals to make sure that this program is something that we want to continue year after year. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would someone like to make an approval of the consent, make an approval of the consensual act? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Action items. The following items were approved during the executive meeting on November 9th. Employment resignations, retirements, salary adjustments, extra duty pay, and a contract release request. Someone like to make a motion for a closed meeting of the Board of Education, December 14th at 7 p.m. and December 17th, 2021.
Move.
Your roll call on this one, please.
Director Asner?
Yes.
Director Hudson? Director Moore?
Yes.
Vice President Petroff?
Yes.
And President Cooney?
Yes. Board regulations is an informational item. Would someone like to make a motion of the approval of our last meeting minutes, please?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. From the action item. Sorry there. Board communications. Anyone have anything that needs to be sent? Okay, calendar of events we can read. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Let us adjourn back to the executive meeting, and we take a quick 5 if anyone has to go to the rest.
Take a break.
Thank you.
Thank you.